Don't have any agenda. I have no agenda to try to overrule Casey. I have an agenda to stick to the rule of law.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Been reaffirmed many times.
Roe versus Wade, decided in 1973, is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. It was reaffirmed in Casey in 1992 and in several other cases. So a good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court, worthy as treatment of precedent like any other.
Roe versus Wade is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. It was decided in 1973. The Supreme Court has reaffirmed the decision. When a decision is challenged and it is reaffirmed, that strengthens its value.
I believe the Constitution protects the right to privacy. And I have no reason or agenda to prejudge the issue.
What would he have done if he'd asked?
Senator, I would have walked out the door. It's not what judges do.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. Welcome to day 470. Oklahoma's Republican Governor Kevin Stitt signed a Texas-style abortion ban into law, prohibiting abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy and allowing private citizens to sue abortion providers in order to enforce the law. The Oklahoma Heartbeat Act, as it's called, takes effect immediately and prohibits abortions once cardiac activity can be detected in an embryo, which can occur as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy, before many women even know they're pregnant. The Oklahoma Supreme Court denied an emergency request to temporarily halt the bill. The measure provides exceptions for medical emergencies, but not for rape or incest. Meanwhile, the National Republican Senatorial Committee circulated a 3-page memo of talking points urging GOP candidates to be the compassionate consensus builder on abortion and attack Democrats for their, quote, extreme and radical views on abortion, end quote. The memo also recommends that Republican candidates, quote, forcefully refute Democrat lies regarding GOP positions on abortion and women's health care, end quote. Over in Ohio, candidate and author J.D. Vance won that state's Senate Republican primary with 32% support after a late endorsement by Donald Trump. Before Trump endorsed him, Vance was in third place in the polls with about 10% support. Vance will now face off against Democratic U.S. Representative Tim Ryan, a 10-term House member and 2020 presidential candidate who won his party's nomination with nearly 70% of the vote. Elsewhere, a Republican candidate for the Michigan House of Representatives who told women to enjoy rape lost his race to represent Michigan's 74th district. Moving on, Trump's acting Homeland Security Secretary changed and delayed an intelligence report about Russian interference in the 2020 election. According to a Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General report, Chad Wolf deviated from DHS standard review procedures and raised objectivity concerns by making changes to a key intelligence report that, quote, appear to be based in part on political considerations, end quote. A September 2020 whistleblower claimed that Wolf had instructed DHS officials to, quote, cease providing intelligence assessments on the threat of Russian interference, end quote, and instead focus on information related to activities being carried out by China and Iran, which better supported Trump's re-election bid. Meanwhile, Trump Jr. met with the January 6th committee. Trump Jr. texted then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows ideas for overturning the 2020 election before it was called. Ivanka, Jared Kushner, and Trump Jr.'s fiancée Kimberly Guilfoyle have all sat for interviews with the committee. In New York, a court denied Trump's request to pause the $10,000 in daily fines being assessed against him while he appeals a contempt order. Trump was held in contempt after failing to comply with a subpoena from New York State Attorney General Letitia James in her civil fraud probe into Trump. Meanwhile, the Trump Organization and the Presidential Inaugural Committee agreed to pay $750,000 to settle a lawsuit that they illegally misused nonprofit funds to enrich the Trump family. The District of Columbia alleged that the Inaugural Committee coordinated with members of the Trump family to, quote, grossly overpay for event space, end quote, at the Trump Hotel during his 2017 inauguration. The Trump Organization will pay $400,000 and the Presidential Inaugural Committee will pay $350,000. Moving on, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point and says it plans to shrink pandemic-era economic support in order to combat the highest inflation we've seen in 40 years. The move by the Federal Reserve marks the most aggressive tightening of monetary policy at one meeting in decades. The rates increase is also the sharpest since 2000 and the second of 7 rate hikes forecast for this year. Federal Reserve Chair Jeremy Powell acknowledged that the central bank's attempt to combat rapid inflation without causing a recession would be very challenging. Quote, "It's not going to be easy," end quote. The S&P 500, meanwhile, rose by 3%, marking its best day in 2 years. And finally, the United States surpassed 1 million COVID-19 deaths, just 27 months after the country's first confirmed coronavirus case. And in the polls, Politico and The Hill say 50% of voters say Roe v. Wade should not be overturned, while 28% say it should, and 22% are undecided. 68% of Democrats and 52% of independents say Roe should not be overturned, while 51% of Republicans say it should. 57% of voters overall say they hope the Supreme Court supports abortion rights, compared to 28% who say they hope the justices oppose them, and 15% who say they don't know or have no opinion. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.